So welcome everyone to the HR Green Room, the place where people, culture and a couple of splashes of green come together. We're your hosts. I'm James Proctor, Chief Commercial Officer at Phase 3.
And I'm Louise Johnston, Head of Sales and Customer Success.
And together we lift the curtain on the world of HR with fresh ideas, honest conversations and a few surprises along the way. Each episode will ask what made us green with envy and what deserves the green light in the world of HR. And of course, we'll be joined on some shows by special guests who bring their own splashes of colour to the conversation. So, grab a seat. The show's about to start in the HR Green Room. So today's topic is the return to work and why it matters. So not return to work as in the return to work process after sickness, but returning to work after a long absence. So in particular, we're probably talking more parental leave and maybe long-term absence. Yes.
So do you want to start off by talking about your experience then, James?
Yeah,
because
I think this is why Steph suggested this as a topic this time, wasn't it? Because I've been lucky enough to have 6 weeks off work on paternity leave, and that is the longest I've ever had off work ever.
Yeah, it's the longest stretch we've not seen you for. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And
did you manage your own return to work?
Well, it's made me think about the actual business process, to be fair. Yeah, because the best analogy I can come up with, I was thinking about this on the drive over, was when I went off on my last day, I consciously decided to leave my laptop switched on and plugged in my office with the door shut, so that everything was updating and syncing, and OneDrive was,
You're
continually.
So different from me. Bye.
Yeah. But I thought I can't cope with the thought of coming back and having 6 weeks worth of documents to sync and Windows updates to do, and that frustration of the first day. The problem is I didn't do that for my brain.
Right.
So although all of my documents are synced, I'm trying to catch up with 6 weeks of things that have happened, with things to read. And I do feel like the computer's ground to a halt a bit in terms of, that when everything's syncing, the processing capacity is less. And so it takes a bit of time to get back into it. And it surprised me how after just 6 weeks, how not bad that's been, but how real that's felt. Kind of that feeling of being completely disconnected and then being back into it. And it was great because I had some time to kind of, first few days were just catch up, chat to people, try and work out what's been going on and kind of what needs my priority and focus. But it really has made me think about my wife, and after a year when she goes back to work, like that must be very different. Yeah. And I know we had, I can't remember who it was, but we had a lady who returned from maternity at Phase 3. And she talked about the two sides to it. And it really did make me think about what we should do from a reboarding perspective. She said that half of her is absolutely thrilled that she gets to be an adult again, and that she gets to have the adult conversations, get back into the thing that's her passion, that she enjoys at work, to have a full cup of tea and actually have it hot, and come into the office. And the other half of her was racked with guilt that she wasn't still at home and kind of focused on home life. I think that I felt an element of that after just 6 weeks, but that must be such a real difference for somebody who's had nearly a year off or 6 months off compared to just that short time. Yeah,
and I think especially after parental leave, it's something that then will actually live with you forever.
Yeah.
That guilt of not being able to be there full time with your kids as much as you want to, but then also that piece where at work, for me, it's the only place where I am Louise.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, I'm mum, sister, daughter, whatever it is. At work, I am just me, and that's actually really nice. And like our colleague said, that place where you can have a hot drink and not be anyone else except yourself, and almost that focus of just being able to work. So it's hard because there is the return to work piece, and how much people want to be in touch while they're off. Do they want to just be completely left alone? We spoke in one of our other shows about the right to disconnect. Or do you want those little drops of information so that you don't end up taking 3 or 4 days to reprocess and remember where you left off?
Yeah. I before I went off consciously, I was asked by our CEO, my boss, how do you want me to keep in touch? Now, there's an element of we are friends as well. And I have a lot of people at work that I would class as friends. So I said to a few people, I'd love to be in touch personally, but I don't want to know about work.
Don't you dare email me.
I think I actually
about
said,
work.
unless there's something that's business ending or somebody is dying, which unfortunately has happened a couple of times in Phase 3's history, that, we have those kind of unexpected things. I don't really want to know. My time and focus is going to be on home.
Yes.
And I think that was helpful in a way, because it also sets up the expectation when you come back as well, that I'm not going to get back into that always on, always available, because things are going to be different, aren't they? And for me, I think having the ability to have that conversation, because I know some people would suffer with the anxiety of not knowing what's going on. And I think that we have a responsibility. We had a colleague who went on a kind of career break for 6 months. I remember you had the conversation before they went to say, I know you don't want to know about work, but if there's something that affects your role or your team whilst you're off, I would like to be in touch. Is that okay? And they said, yes, please, absolutely. And I think we contacted that person once because something did happen at work that they wanted to be aware of personally. And they really appreciated that. So I think that kind of personalisation in terms of how do you want to be treated during this time is actually one of the most important things in planning before you go off.
That's it. And of course, there's different types of leave.
Yes.
And that is why I think it's so important for managers to be human with the people that they work with. So if you're going off, for example, on parental leave, it is, again, the same question. What do you want to know?
Yeah.
And would you like any sort of keep in touch time? How much does that look like? But if you've got somebody going off perhaps planned sickness, then completely different conversation around what they want it to look like. Do they want to know anything, or is it that real time to just focus on yourself and finding that balance so that someone doesn't feel forgotten about? Because that's the other thing. It might be that if you did have some planned time off, I don't want to be forgotten about. What if everything changes and then I come back and I said to you, don't contact me, but then something fundamental happens and nobody told me? You'd feel then really too disconnected. It's so hard to find that
isolated
balance. Yes.
My mum had a knee replacement recently, so she knew well in advance she was going to be off, and she was going to be off for quite a while. I'd say quite a while. Probably, I think she had 2 months off in total. And I remember her going through that range of emotions. Like, I've not heard from anybody from work. Well, is that a good thing? Yeah, is that a good thing? Well, what if they don't need me when I'm back? And that's, there's a real kind of insight into how people can feel there. But there is, I think it comes back to that balance, doesn't it? In terms of, if mum had asked her manager, will you just let me know how things are going? We have a weekly update at Phase 3. And then Asad, our CEO, does a monthly video update, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I think in the time I was off, I listened to 2 monthly updates. And I think I read the weekly update a few weeks before I came back, because I could do that without logging into everything. I could just go on Viva Engage and look. And that was just helpful just to kind of see what kind of things have been going on. But my mum didn't have anything like that. So she was completely isolated from work other than her friends. So she was going out for sort of lunches with them and things, and finding out that way what was going on. But I think on the flip side of this, we have people who go off sometimes unexpectedly. And one of the hardest things there is getting the handover.
Yeah.
And I've had situations before where we have somebody who was really quite ill, who was on the phone whilst ill, trying to hand over all their work to somebody else. And we're like, in this moment, it doesn't matter. The most important thing is actually, you're getting treatment for what's going on. And other times where people have just gone off, left you in the lurch, no idea where they're at with things. They haven't communicated to anybody what was happening, and that can be really difficult. But hopefully people are understanding of the fact that this was unexpected. So we'll deal with that.
And then there's a really important communication piece in there, because I do remember an incident where somebody had to go off, full stop. That did result in some backlash with some customers and some colleagues who were angry at the time, very cross that person just, stopped working. Obviously, because of confidentiality, we couldn't say anything. And then, people did feel quite sort of disgruntled about it. But then when they found out the situation, it was, oh my God, I now feel absolutely dreadful that I was cross with that person when they were really having to focus on themselves at the time. So it's very difficult, I think. And that's where the communication comes in, where it takes management or HR, if they're seeing that type of situation where somebody has to go, to say they have to go. And that's the end of it. We will sort it. We're a team. We can muddle through it together. We can work out where we are within delivery. We will make it work. But they won't be coming back for a while. Let's give them that space. And if you miss that, it then creates bad feeling later down the line for all people involved. So I think it is really crucial that when there's absence, whether it's planned or unplanned, that we remain human about it. And it's not just, a pinged workflow. This person's now off. Picking up the phone, talking about it, they're off. If you need to know a reason, fine. If you don't need to know, you don't need to know, but this is now what we're going to do.
Yeah. And I think one of the challenges there is how the person perceives it as well, isn't it? So I know I've had people who've been kind of really ill in the past, and I've sent them messages to say, just to let you know, I'm thinking of you. I'm not expecting anything in reply. If you want to tell me how you are, you can. This isn't a work thing, just human to human. I hope you're okay. And I remember somebody coming back to work and said that meant so much that there was no expectation, but I knew that you were thinking of me.
Yeah.
I've seen the other side of that, where I've been in grievance meetings where people have said, and my manager had the audacity to contact me whilst I was sick. You think, well, yes, because they care. They're a human. They want to know that as a human, you're okay. There's a completely different level of perception. And that can depend on where you're at situationally with what's happening as well.
Yeah.
But I think that's where policy and process and consistency is really important. And that's something that HR can influence in organisations, isn't it? In terms of, if you go off sick from our organisation, you can expect that we will be in touch to check in on you to see if you're okay.
Yeah. Interestingly, though, I half agree with you and I half disagree, because you can't write a policy to tell someone to be human. So let's actually take your paternity leave again, because we mostly talk about work and I wanted you to have the best break possible. And I knew that if you saw Louise Johnston flash on your phone, you'd think,
Probably not.
Well, I'm not sure, Is it something work related?
Yeah.
But it was that human thing of just checking in. I think the message said, nothing work related, just thinking of you, hope everything is well and you're having the most amazing time. And we replied and we spoke about it. But you can't write a policy for somebody to have that thought.
Yeah, I think it's probably different where it's paternity and maternity related rather than a sickness thing, isn't it? Because one's probably quite positive and one's quite negative in that extent. And I know we've had people going off maternity leave who said, don't care about hearing anything from any of you until I need my kit days when I'm in nil pay at the end of my maternity, and then I'll start talking to you then. And we do still send out kind of nice keeping in touch things, and we like to know child's name so we can send them a little gift basket with things like that. In fact, somebody posted one this week on social media. One of our guys who just become a dad for the first time, we sent out a little baby grow, what's it called? Baby grow, that said mini team pastry or whatever. Kind of being quite touched by it, and that's why organisations like to know. I know we do payroll for a company who they do kind of a gift as a grossed up cash amount, so they like to, as part of their maternity policy, they have let us know when baby's born and what they're called, and then they get a nice letter from the manager and a gift. So there's things like that I think are quite beneficial. When it's sickness absence, there is a different focus there then, isn't there, in terms of that expectation, and particularly one if it's workplace related.
Yeah, of course.
And that might be somebody who's off sick with workplace stress. or if it's actually, let's be honest, the backlash from a process that's happening.
Yeah.
Because that can be a common occurrence. You invite somebody for a disciplinary because there's been some allegations made, they go sick.
Yeah. I'm ill now.
Yes, yeah. Suddenly, suddenly I've got workplace stress that I didn't have the day before, and I never reported to anybody. And it's a common occurrence that we deal with in HR, isn't it? And that's why these policies are important, and why it's important sometimes to communicate with people who are off sick in terms of things that are happening in the business, because actually the thing that you are saying you're stressed about might be alleviated by this piece of news that we have. For example, if you're saying that you're stressed because there's too much work in the team, but we've just recruited 5 new people to help you, then that actually might aid your return to work if you feel there's less pressure. So it does come back to that balance, but there are cases where people have accused organisations of harassment when they've been off ill. I remember working at the local authority, we had private investigators go around and see people.
Wow.
Yeah, because obviously they're public money and they're getting 6 months full pay, 6 months half pay, and they're claiming to be off with a bad back and they're out in the garden mowing the lawn. Things like that. And they would literally hire private investigators to go out. My mum used to work for one, which was fascinating.
Yeah.
The things she used to tell
Some
us.
stories to tell.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the interesting thing there is kind of the HR focus. And one of the things that one of our recent return to work employees said to us was, I want my induction again.
Really?
We've had a number of people who have joined us either in the late stages of kind of preparing to be parents, or already on maternity leave and were looking for their job for when they came back, so they're going to start kind of in 6 to 9 months. One of them was really funny because we sent them out a laptop just so they could join the Christmas party, and then kind of they weren't joining us until about the June of the following year, and it went to the wrong house, and they didn't realise until June of the following year they didn't realise we'd actually sent them one in the first
my goodness.
place. So their laptop was sat at the wrong person's house for 6 months. But we've had quite a few of those because obviously if the person's right for the job, we won't kind of take into the fact that they might not be able to be here for quite a while. But this lady joined, I think, for 4 months, went off for a year's maternity, and then came back. And she said, I'd really like my induction again, because it's been so long. There's a lot changed in the organisation. There's a lot changed in the area that I work in. And actually, I'd just like to be reinducted. I think that's, as we said at the top of this, onboarding versus reboarding.
Yes.
Is quite different, isn't it? And a lot can happen in 6 months, 9 months, a year, can't it, in terms of an organisation? If you think of your teams and the change that's happened there, coming back into a new team with maybe new colleagues you've never met before, maybe a new manager, it can be quite daunting, I can imagine, to come back into that.
Absolutely. And you have sort of sometimes like these almost intrusive thoughts. When I was off actually it was just a bit of extended annual leave. I think it was only 3 weeks, nothing, astronomical. But I thought, oh my God, if everything's gone really well, they might think they don't need me anymore because it's run really smoothly. Not that you want there to be problems, but it does go to show that anything sort of, well, for me, beyond the normal 2 weeks, you start to wonder what happens when I'm away. What will it be like when I go back? Business moves really, really quickly. So how do I catch up? Because I know that especially in my role, most things will have changed.
Yeah.
Any sort of customer situations, escalations would have moved on from there. Sales will have moved on. So you're starting fresh every single time. You go off even for a couple of days. So it does then bleed into the conversation around keeping in touch yourself. And then, we had a whole podcast on this around the right to switch off. And what do people do when they're on parental leave, for example? Is the temptation there to log in to make it that your re-onboarding is easier so that you're not going in, cold on the first day? Or do you just switch off and see what happens 9 a.m. on the next Monday?
Yeah. It comes back to personalisation, doesn't it? I think that's the key. It's if it's known absence, have the conversation beforehand and find out what they do want to know, what they don't want to know. We are an organisation, I think, that outside of work apps wouldn't really be in touch with each other outside of that. We don't have like a work WhatsApp thing anymore. We used to have many years ago. So you could quite easily disconnect from our organisation. I know not every business is like that. But ultimately, I think from an individual perspective, I know if I had seen something that was a bit of a fire that needed putting out, and it was something that I knew I could do easily that somebody else would struggle with, I would then probably feel I could probably deal with that. It'll only take me 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're sucked back into it. And that was a time when I was off sick, for example. The only time I've ever been off properly sick, I think I had 2.5 weeks off after an operation. That was a time when I needed to focus on recovering and my body needed to heal. And this time I needed to focus on home life and not work life. And I think that is a statutory right to be absent from work and to be paid for it as well, not necessarily full pay, but to be paid for it, so that you can focus on the thing that is requiring your attention and not be focusing on work. And we're talking about office kind of related roles here. There's lots of people who, once they walk out the door, have no connection to work anyway. People who work in retail, hospitality, care, for example. So for us, this is quite different. But I don't have a work phone. I only have one device, which I kind of share between the two. So it would be easy for me to just open my emails. And I was really, really disciplined to uninstall everything work related, fully disconnect from it. And I felt able to do that. But coming back, then I did have that thought of what's happened.
So in your position,
Yeah.
how did you manage your first few days back? I know that you sent us all a message to say, I'm back. If there's anything urgent, tell me.
Yeah.
What did you do? What did you do first? Emails?
No. So I was
Updates?
very lucky. So Kerry, my incredible EA, had put together a tracker of all of the things that I needed to be aware of that had happened whilst I was off, email wise.
Right.
And I think probably because it was planned, and let's face it, I talked to everybody about it before I went. Everybody knew I wasn't going to be there. So a lot of people just didn't bother sending me anything because they knew that I wasn't going to see it. So there was an element of some people sent me things anyway, and they were categorized for me as high, medium, low priority. I put a prompt into Copilot when I came back that said, I've been off for 6 weeks, summarize all the interactions on my teams and emails and give me a RAG status of what you think I should prioritize my time on.
Fantastic.
And then I sent out an email to all of my kind of team to say, I'm back, I'm going to be looking at things. If you don't need my attention, that's fine. If you do need something to have my attention, let me know. And I think nearly everybody replied. And I thanked everybody actually for allowing me to have the time off and to be uninterrupted, because literally nobody contacted me about work, and almost everybody contacted me kind of personally to say, hope things are going well. So I thanked everybody for that time. And then my first few days were blocked out just to catch up. And at first it was focusing on just reading. Like I say, resyncing that brain into those things. I didn't really have many meetings. I had a catch up with my manager for an hour and a half on the first day, just kind of being brought up to speed. And a lot of it was a surprise. And obviously I managed quite a few functions at Phase 3, so there's lots to learn. And the first focus I had was the people stuff. So what's going on with our team and who's joined us. I sent out an email to everybody who'd started in the window that I was off, because normally I always do an introduction. I'm trying to be here for everybody's first day. Sent out an email to everyone to say, sorry I missed you, I'm back now, love to talk to you soon. And then gradually spoke to all of my kind of direct reports, and then got back into people who had not sent me things but had waited till I came back to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few of those in terms of, I didn't want to bother you with this, I didn't know if you were looking at things, so I've kept it out of your kind of headspace until now.
So you used AI to categorize anything that had come in, and then you trusted your team to get in contact with you when they knew you were back and if there was anything else to do.
Yeah, and it actually did a great job, because I think there was one customer churn risk that had been flagged in an email from you actually that the AI picked out on. A couple of people related issues that were being dealt with and were in flight. Some senior recruitment that needed my attention, and one other thing that wasn't really relevant that it flagged, but they were all the things that had been talked about in Teams channels that I was in and group chats and things. And I know people that have come back from maternity and paternity and just gone delete on the last 6 weeks and not looked at anything because they weren't here, so that wasn't the time. And it's, it's, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But I think the flip side of that as well is, obviously I was lucky enough to have an EA. Now, as a manager, I always make sure that if my team are off, their inboxes are covered, categorised and sorted whilst they're on leave.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've done always in terms of getting access to their inbox, letting them know that, obviously, as well, just for that period. Mm-hmm. But their out of office should say who to redirect things to and when they're going to be back, obviously. But I like to say, just put a flag on to say, I've dealt with this, but read it.
Yes.
Just so you're aware that it's happened, but there's no action for you. And then categorise things that need action as a follow-up, because it happened 2 days before you were coming back, and therefore I thought, well, that can wait until you're back. But I think that's helpful in itself, just so that people have that kind of, again, that RAG status of this is what you need to read but don't do anything with. This is something that demands your attention, and these are all the meetings that you need to attend, but I can't accept them for you because it's Outlook and it doesn't do it for you. But I think that in itself can be really helpful to have that kind of process and policy in place, because you mentioned earlier, what am I going to come back to? That coming back to a clean slate and knowing what I need to prioritise is probably one of the biggest benefits to somebody returning to work, rather than coming into a storm of, I've been off for 2 weeks and I've got 4 weeks worth of work to do in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think why it matters, there's a lot of benefits of having a proper re-onboarding process or empowerment for managers to know what people actually want when they come back to work, and then risks as well, so that people do feel engaged with the company, they know vaguely what they're coming back to. I think,
feel
like
wanted.
everything, to feel wanted, it's striking that balance, understanding, if possible, what they want before they go, how you manage that through the process, and then what it looks like when they come back.
And I think, the return to work process is probably more formal in sickness, because you have the return to work meeting, don't you, where you're talking about, are you likely to go off again? Is there anything the workplace can do to make reasonable adjustments, etc.? I always feel like that should be a feature of every long-term absence.
Yeah.
Where you have your return to work meeting to say, right, what workplace adjustments do we need to put in place after this period of absence that you've had? My mum's example with sickness, she actually needed to be able to work from home a little bit more because she was struggling mobility-wise, and there's no lift in her workplace, there's only steps.
Yeah.
But from a kind of a normal working from home perspective, I know that some people have said, well, actually, if I could avoid a 9 a.m. meeting, that would be really helpful, because I need time to get myself ready and kind of get back up to speed on the morning, but I'll work a little bit later in the day and make up for it. So I do think that should be a real feature in terms of why it matters, giving people that sense of psychological safety to be able to have that conversation, but also to be clear that there is a norm and an expectation. But if you're back at work, you should be here to work. And I think it's interesting that, because we've had situations in the past, I say we, I mean me in kind of my HR and management positions, where I know somebody has come back to work who shouldn't be back at work, because something's happened at home or they're just not ready. And I've had to medically suspend people before because I felt they weren't fit to be at work. And the medical suspension process is slightly different, isn't it? But actually having that honest conversation to say, look, you're probably coming back to work because you can't afford to not be at work. We're going to pay you anyway.
Yeah.
And we're going to put you on suspension for 2 weeks. This isn't a punitive thing. This is, I feel like you need a little bit more time to readjust before you come back, and then do a bit of a phased return. Now, for me, that's a sign of a good employer and a good manager that they will do that, especially taking into account the pay element of that, which not all businesses can afford to do. But that kind of feeling that somebody's recognised that, they're taking care of me and they've got my interests at heart, that ultimately buys you long-term kind of, buy-in from that individual, that when commitment. Times were tough for me, my organisation stepped up and gave me the support that I needed during that time. And we've got to talk about HR tech as well, because you mentioned earlier about lots of workflows. And I can have a workflow to ping me. Now, I think it depends on the size of the organisation, doesn't it? If you've got 25,000 people on payroll, then reminders for people to send Map B1s, etc., and those kind of things that probably are important. But standard workflows to email employees during absences, what do you think about that?
I guess, well, all it's going to do, if it's a standard workflow going to the employee, it's just going to clog up their inbox. And as we said earlier, as soon as they're back, delete.
Yeah.
They're just going to delete everything. So I think, to be honest, if it's possible within the process to stop those coming through, because they won't be read, they're not going to be taken much notice of. But the flip side is, again, depending on the type of leave, it might be that that individual wants to get some sort of, standard information sent to them.
Yeah.
So even if they're not going to be at work, do they want any information sent through to their personal email address? For example, if somebody is on a sabbatical, they might still want a weekly update or a monthly update, and that would go through to their personal email address if that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
So I guess you could leverage the tech depending on what somebody wants.
Yeah.
Depending how easy it is to adjust or create these workflows. But then when you were talking earlier, you also got me thinking about AI and what would be possible on my behalf for it to look out for while I'm off. So obviously you had your inbox set up in a way so that Copilot, when you got back in, could have the command, go and find it.
Yeah.
But likely now there would be some sort of agentic AI that you could set up to do that on your behalf ready, and perhaps send you some regular information about
draft
what's
the
going
responses
on.
for you to clear your inbox on the first day.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of workflows, I think there are some things that are important to people, and obviously working as closely as I do to payroll, I think that pay matters to people when they're not at work.
Absolutely.
It's a really important factor that people want to understand when their pay might change and what they're going to be paid. So that's one thing where in our organisation we have 3 months full pay, 3 months half pay when people are on absence for kind of sickness, for example. When that pay is due to drop, we have a standard process that the HR system notifies the HR team. They generate a letter, but they contact the person to say, just to let you know, this is what's going to be happening on this date, usually within kind of 2 or 3 weeks. They send the letter as well, just in case they're not reading messages or getting back to them. But it's that courtesy that something that will impact you.
Yeah, personally,
and we also make the decision at that point if we're actually going to do it as well, because we've had situations where people have been really ill and we've said, actually, we're not going to drop them down to half pay. The last thing they need to be worried about right now is pay. So even that, to let them know that you should be, and you're probably expecting to, but just so you know, we're not going to make you rush back to work. We're going to continue you with full pay. That's the kind of thing where I think a workflow prompt is useful, to prompt the human to do something rather than just to send it direct to the end recipient to say, you've got a decision to make.
Yeah. And then I think another interesting one, obviously you're talking about pay. What about things like recruitment or job opportunities while you're away? Because some people, again, might be switched off, don't care, happy in my role, don't want to know. But then if there's an operational change in line manager, or perhaps a promotion opportunity where you might want to apply for a more senior role than you're in at the moment, how do you then gauge that? Because you don't necessarily know that's going to happen before somebody goes off. So it's, do you tell them and they might be quite offended? Don't tell me this now. I don't want to know. Or how am I going to make any changes? How do I apply for a job when I'm, off on parental leave or, on extended leave somewhere?
I think that's
how
all
do you manage
about
that bit?
I think it's all about the balance of communication, isn't it? I can send you something, doesn't mean you have to open it and read it.
Well, we said this earlier, but if you do, I feel pressured to read something.
But if for example, if I send you an email that says your pay slip in the title, because we're going to send you that whilst you're on leave, you would probably open that because you choose to see what I'm going to get. If I chose to send you an email to say potential internal recruitment, you could think, I'm not bothering a new job, and just delete it. And we're giving you the choice. We're giving you the access to that information. If you choose not to engage with that, that is your choice. And I think ultimately that's the safest way to handle it, that
Yeah.
We have an agreed communication method. Whilst you're on leave and you're not accessing your work emails, we'll email your personal one.
Yeah.
And then you can choose to reply to that in 6 weeks' time or not at all. That's your choice. So
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
kind of view of that.
Because those are the things, as an organisation moves quickly, develops and changes over time. We just said in 6 weeks, you feel like you come back and there's been so many changes. If you know that you're going to be off for, say, more than 2 or 3 weeks, whatever that reason may be, if it is planned leave, understanding how much that person wants to know. If it's changes across a different team, they might say, not interested.
Yeah.
If it's a change in my team, I do want to know.
Yeah.
And I think those are all the conversations that sometimes can be forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, there's a statutory responsibility in some cases, well, through organisation change, for example, isn't there, to notify people on maternity.
Yeah.
And so even agreeing how you're going to do that is important. And unfortunately, traditionally, the best way is snail mail, isn't it? Because you know then it's arrived, and it's the easiest way to communicate. So yeah, that can be an element that actually, from a statutory basis, you must let people know if something is happening, but doesn't necessarily have to be just the bad stuff. The good stuff can be shared as well.
That's it.
So we're onto our feature for the day, which is what makes you green with envy. So I will go first on this one. Obviously, I was in a very fortunate position in our organisation to get 6 weeks of leave, and that was a combination of annual leave. We have an unlimited leave policy and paternity leave. So I think a lot of people would be green with envy of the amount of leave that I could take to be with my family. But some organisations, kind of really, I think, forward-thinking organisations, have basically balanced the two parents' rights. And Aldi, I think, called out as one of the specific examples where they give the same leave to the paternal parent of a child as they do to the maternal parent of a child. And I think that's an important kind of turn of phrase, because when we're talking about same-sex adoptions, for example, and many different ways that people would take parental leave, it's important to recognise that. So I think that's my green with envy, the fact that organisations are recognising that actually the paternal parent has just as much of a responsibility to be part of the growing family as the maternal parent. So that is my green with envy.
I think, I would agree with that. What sort of springs to mind when we talk there is maybe different sectors, however. So I do wonder if in sort of the sector that we work in, it's kind of more acceptable, whereas you think about maybe people that are self-employed or in construction, those kind of industries, whether that would be as accepted. And I think absolutely agreeing with envy, because it means so much that you do get to have that time off, but there is still possibly a long way to go in terms of that shared leave and what it looks like in reality, depending on pay differences, etc.
My brother-in-law, I became an uncle 6 months ago, and my brother-in-law works for Amazon, and he got 3 months off and then had a phased return to work, and that was really important because the birth was a C-section delivery, and that's obviously recovery time, and it's not a quick thing. And my sister needed the help at home, and to have that around was really important to her. And it's interesting, since I've been back, the first question is always, how are you? How have you been? The second one is, and how's Amy?
Yeah.
Because she's now dealing with everything on her own. I'm still around to a certain extent, but that's everybody's second question. So I think that's why, for me, it's so important, because it's actually not just about the time off for me, but also the support for the other person in the parent relationship there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're out of time.
Thank
Again,
you.
yes, thank you for another interesting episode and for sharing personal views. So all that's left to say is thank you for watching us in the HR Green Room. Please keep giving the green light to the things that matter the most, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time.